There we are live.
Hello,
Hi, everybody. Thank you
Hi.
for joining Latinas Chat Media. We're back on our monthly Saturday brunch edition. We know there's a lot of things you can do on your Saturday, so we're really happy that you're here with us. I'm Sofia Quintero. Why don't my co-panelists introduce themselves? Maria.
hi, I'm Maria Nieto. I'm a writer and producer and proud to be a Latina who's chatting media.
Siri.
Good morning. I'm Siri, and I am a poet, actor, writer, performer, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
And Linda.
I am Linda Nieves Powell. I am a writer, director, producer, and photographer.
Okay, so let's just dive right into it because we're really trying to keep these to an hour, and we wanted to talk today a little bit about Laurie Hernandez, our Olympic hopeful. J-Lo in the news for a lot of different things this week, and that's going to segue right into Latinx's involvement in Black Lives Matter. So let's start off because we want to celebrate Laurie Hernandez, our first Latina.
Second.
Well, I was
In
going
tenure,
to say
sorry.
first Latina since 2004. So it's
Yeah.
been a long time. But she is the second. Who was the first again, Siri?
Oh, that's a good question. I was just looking up her name and I couldn't find it. But I thought she was an alternate. I don't think she was on the main team.
So she actually didn't even get to compete.
2002. Yeah, I don't think so. But
So
let me
that
double
makes-
check that.
Okay, so that makes Laurie's, making the team even more phenomenal.
Yeah.
You want to know a little bit about her?
Yes.
Yes, tell us, Linda.
So Laurie Hernandez is 16 years old and is a native of Old Bridge, New Jersey. Her name is actually Lauren, but we all know the Burbs are full of Laurens, and she wanted to stand out and decided to go by Laurie. Her grandparents are Puerto Rican, her parents are Puerto Rican, she's Puerto Rican. In 2014, she suffered a serious injury to her kneecap and MCL. On a landing, she required surgery.
Oh, wow.
2 years later, she's going to the Olympics. I find that so impressive. And
That's awesome.
she's on her way to Rio de Janeiro to compete in the Summer Olympics with 4 other amazing American gymnasts.
Yeah.
Well, and she's on a team with some other powerhouses like Gabby Douglas and Simone. Biles is her last name, or
Biles. Simone Biles.
Biles. That's what I thought. I wanted to pronounce it correctly. And so this is really an exciting team to watch. We've always had women of color. Often we've had women of color on our Olympic gymnast teams, but to see some women of the African diaspora on so many of them is really exciting.
Yeah.
It's a great team. Great diversity. I'm excited.
I am too. It makes me want to watch. And I mean, I like watching gymnasts in general, but now I really want to watch and I really want to root for. And I find it really interesting to now have a Puerto Rican member on the team, given all that's going on, representing the United States, given all that's going on between the United States and Puerto Rico. Yeah. So it creates for some complex feelings. I don't know if any if you guys have thought about that.
I feel the same. I think that, well, the interesting thing is that Puerto Rico has a team on the Olympics. So sometimes what we see is U.S. Olympia, or U.S. athletes rather, like U.S. based athletes compete for the Puerto Rico team because maybe they have a better chance of earning a spot there. So that's been a really interesting sort of thing to see. I know John Orozco was on the team in the 2012 Olympics, and he's Puerto Rican. He's actually from here, from the Bronx, and so it was really nice to see him on the team 4 years ago as well, and he made it back again this year. So I think that what it does for me is that it provides a different kind of space, maybe in sports, to talk about, the relationship between Puerto Ricans and the United States and how layered, our identity is.
Absolutely.
And I know one of the things that also came up is when we decided to talk about Laurie Hernandez was not only just to acknowledge her and celebrate her, but also because of how we found out about her. Linda, you want to speak because you were particularly, striding about that. So do you want to say?
I always have something to say about Latina magazine, but I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing research, and I do know that NBC did a lot of coverage on her. But then I started Googling, and I noticed that people were actually, for some time, writing pieces on her. I just decided, because I get Google alerts, and the word is Latina. So usually I get a lot of Latina magazine pieces.
Oh, right.
I noticed that there was no coverage. I haven't seen anything yet. Maybe it's me. I haven't seen anything. Maybe they did something after the fact, but I haven't seen anything, introducing us to her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was odd.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. That's what I said to everybody on
We'll
Facebook.
keep looking for it. I mean, I tried to look for some stuff. Linda, before I make my point, could you adjust your camera because you're getting cut off? You're doing the Kilroy thing. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that. It's interesting because if you guys will remember, not that long ago, there was another Boricua gymnast that made waves, Sofina de Jesus.
Yeah.
Because she's a member of the UCLA. She's a member of the UCLA team, and they had like this because of her like dynamic, eye-catching floor routine that was punctuated with hip-hop moves. They just beat Utah, and she was on Ellen because of this, and it was the first time in a while that I had heard about like a Latina gymnast, and the fact that she's Boricua and African American, and it was I did find an article on Latina again by Rachel Ricard covering her, but here Laurie Hernandez has made the Olympic team, and I haven't found that yet. So, but I think we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But I think maybe Latina Magazine might be hearing the feedback because they just did a panel of Latinas and sororities.
Yeah.
And the topic was Black Lives Matter. And it was a live video feed, and it was a panel. And I think that's a move forward. So maybe they are taking some of the critiques to heart.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to say also, and it's funny because I think this is the dead horse that I like to beat every so often. Here comes Charlie the horse. But my point is that I find it's really important that we have some kind of like communication media infrastructure. There's Black Twitter, there's all sorts of publications that are on top of African American news, and we just don't have it. We should be hearing about these things first and foremost from our own publications. But everybody else takes the lead, and we kind of find out afterwards. We're like, hey, we're proud. But you know what? It would be nice to like lead the conversation. It'd be nice to set the tone for the conversation. And Latina Magazine just keeps freaking dropping the ball. Although, like I said, kudos, I'm going to join in and applauding and saying a good step forward. They're doing a live stream on an important matter, and maybe they are hearing the feedback. Because they really do have the stage, and they have a responsibility.
No, I don't think any of us would disagree with you.
No. And there are other people who are actually doing good work. I don't know how to, is it
remezcla? Yes.
They're pretty much ahead of the curve most of the time.
That's true.
They are. I find that the more nuanced articles and covering the things people aren't talking about, like it was through remezcla that I learned about a wave of Latinos who had been killed in police shootings. And so, we're not hearing that not only from other Latino sources, but also even, non-Latino sources are not talking about that. And it was through Remezcla that I found out about those things. We know these things are going on, but they're not getting coverage. So kudos to them for being that voice, and hopefully they will inspire other people to pick up that slack. And I think since we're talking about the underreported stories of Latinos being murdered by the police, this might be a good time to segue into the very difficult week that Jennifer Lopez has had.
A very difficult week.
And for those of you who have lives and are not on social media. Jennifer Lopez and Lin Manuel Miranda, in a very positive move, got together to record a song a charity record to raise money for the families of the people who were killed in the shooting and yes.
The Hispanic Federation for the Somos Orlando Fund.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that detail because that's important. To raise money for that fund, which is to support the surviving families of the victims of the Orlando Pulse shooting. Now, in an effort to promote this record, Jennifer Lopez tweeted about the song, but used the hashtag All Lives Matter. And because All Lives Matter is usually used as a dismissive response to Black Lives Matter, she took a lot of heat. And then she deleted the tweet without ever responding to the backlash. So we got a lot to say about that. Linda, why don't you start us off, because I don't see Siri. I think she might have lost the connection. Hopefully she'll get back on.
I should have my notes.
Start us off, Linda.
Is it Blavit? What was it? What's the name of the publication that came out with the whole setting it straight with the all Black Lives Matter?
Like there was an article in Blavity,
right?
That in addition to calling Jennifer Lopez out for using this, also accused her of cultural appropriation, right, and likening her as a cultural appropriator to Justin Timberlake, and accused her of wearing blackness as a costume. And I know that all of us, especially those of us who are Boricua from New York, as much as we could respect and appreciate and share the outrage of her using that tweet, whether it was knowing what it is.
Uh-oh. Siri, just lower something on your end.
Yeah. Your volume. Try lowering your volume.
You might want to turn off your, you know what?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Can you try disconnecting and coming back on? Because we're losing a lot of time on this. Can you, Siri? I don't think she can even hear us.
Let me unmute her.
I don't know how to take her off. Oh, mute. I can mute her.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Until she, and then we'll check in with her to see if she's cleared it up so she can speak. So I think one where I think we're in agreement that we empathize with the anger. We do believe she needs to be held accountable, whether she knew what she was saying or not saying by using that hashtag. But calling her cultural appropriator and likening her to Justin Timberlake goes too fucking far.
I think you guys could probably speak on this a lot better than I can. But my first reaction, I was a little, I'll be honest, I was afraid at first to take away the whole article is about, let's stop, we cannot use all lives matter. We have to respect Black Lives Matter, and I get that. There was a part of me that's like, wait, something doesn't feel right about this. And this is the second time, maybe the third time I felt this. Where is this?
I can't hear you at all, Linda.
I can't hear you either.
Did you unmute Siri's thing? Okay.
Siri's muted. Give me a second. Let me try to bring her on again and see what happens.
Latinas presented JF to everyone. Siri, can you hear us?
Can you come?
Okay, no more. There's no more feedback. Awesome. She can hear us, and there's
no
more
feedback.
Talk.
Right, she can't talk. That's the thing.
Because the mic is off, and now for some reason it's not letting me.
It said that you presented it to her, so presented her to us.
I can't
there's
hear
no
her.
sound.
And then I remuted. I'm not going to respond. It's okay. Go on with the
Okay,
show.
so finish.
Fine.
Okay, so finish your point, Linda. You
So
said
my
you were
point is
very
that
uncomfortable because of
I
where
was
it was
very
going.
uncomfortable, yes, because I didn't hear a quick response from the community either. I think people were, trying to sort out those feelings, but I feel like
Right.
I felt that throughout the whole what's her name, Beyonce Lemonade thing. When I felt that there was a division, don't tell me that I can't relate to Lemonade. I was really upset about that. I am always upset when I feel like I can't be a part of something that that I feel I should be a part of,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm seeing that a lot. I'm seeing that a lot online. And when I saw this piece, it reminded me of all the times that I traveled across this country with the shows, and people did not understand what the Puerto Rican experience was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happened in this piece.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
go ahead.
yes, you make a really good point. What I wanted to say, now I'm getting an echo. I'm gonna take my earpiece out so I don't hear my echo. And then I'll put it back in when someone else speaks so I can hear you. So, Linda, I think you make a really good point about how there wasn't a quick response, and I actually think that that's a good thing, because I think part of the problem, and I'm not going to put this just on the Blavity writer, but this is a problem of the blogosphere, where complex things happen and people don't take the time to really reflect on them before they're churning out these think pieces. And I'm going to paraphrase Joe Morgan, who not that long ago said, if something drops and an hour later you're kicking out a think piece, you haven't thought enough. And so I was actually thinking that I was actually happy, because this is a very sensitive conversation around Puerto Ricans and hip hop, especially Puerto Ricans in New York and hip hop. J.Lo complicates the situation because she has distanced herself from her roots, and she has worked with a lot of Black collaborators at the beginning of her career, and she has a lot of African American fans. So she complicates this. But take her out of it, there has always been, Puerto Ricans have always been a part of the creation of hip hop, and have been erased in some of that history. And I think older African Americans understand that. People who are old enough to know a time before when there was no hip hop understand that. And maybe that's why you don't have a lot of them reposting that thing. A lot of the people who are reposting and agreeing and coming for Jennifer Lopez as an appropriator tend to be younger African Americans who don't understand that. And so I'm actually really glad that Puerto Ricans, as sensitive as we were about it, didn't respond right away, because responding from that space actually doesn't further the conversation. And that's why I really appreciate and want to shout out Maria Rodriguez Morales' piece, because she responded with the nuance that it deserved. She responded with the fact that Jennifer was wrong for saying all lives matter, but we can call her out and hold her accountable for that without calling her cultural appropriator, because she, being a Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx, old enough to have grown up with hip hop, older than hip hop, that she engaging in hip hop is not putting on a costume and is not appropriating anything, and that we have to have these nuanced, layered, that these are paradoxes that this is not a conversation of either or. This is a conversation of also and people can call out the fact that Jennifer Lopez hasn't collaborated with Black folks in a while, that she has, like the whole thing with Ashanti, using Ashanti's vocals and rapping with Ja Rule and LL Cool J, and being produced by Jermaine Dupri and Diddy. They have a right to name those things, but that's not. But being in hip hop doesn't make her a cultural appropriator. Distancing herself is a problem. Not I've always said she has never as far as I know. Maybe I forget. she has never collaborated with a black woman. I have a problem with that. You know, she could collaborate with Iggy Azalea. Why can't she collaborate with Nicki Minaj? You know, so, and we
Maria
have
had
our theory.
something to respond to
Yes.
that.
So, okay. So, yeah, that's my overall feeling about it. And I wanted to just speak to the larger problem with social media. So not to pin this only on Blavity, but the larger problem with social media of needing clickbait and responding to things so quickly that they actually don't help the conversation. They can actually hurt the dialogue by not being more nuanced. So, Maria.
Yeah, no, I was going to say a couple of things. The first is that I was, you know, full disclosure, I was one of those that jumped all over it because, quite frankly, how are you a public figure and not know what all lives matter and the context in which it exists? No. Listen, stop it. You either can be the dunce in the class and be quiet, or you can excuse yourself. Oh, no. No. Sorry. Yeah, no, she's got to stop with that. She really has to. Either get a team that shields you from that, or really just pick up a book. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. You got to pick up a book, honey.
She's not going to pick up a book. She's not going to pick up a book. Let me tell you where she's really at fault. If you're not going to pick up a book, if you're not going to do your homework, then hire somebody to do it for you.
Thank you.
Yes, right.
Is in charge of her Twitter.
Right.
You know, now
right.
I'm going to say this. On the same week, Janet Jackson did the same thing and wasn't called out the same way. Now hers was hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag All Lives Matter. And they got on her, people got on her, and then they let it go. So you didn't hear a whole lot about the Janet Jackson thingy.
I think for the most part,
I
think for the most part, Jennifer Lopez, she's the Teflon Doña. She put this out there. She owes the African American community. She's never tweeted Black Lives Matter. At least Janet did tweet Black Lives Matter. And J-Lo has never acknowledged Black Lives Matter, and she's never, you know, like again, she has an African American fan base who she would not be anywhere without. She owes them an apology, and I think it was a real.
Go ahead.
I think I just want to make one last thing and then can ask the question. I think that I have a real problem, and this is not the first time that she's done this, where she makes a mistake, and it's been a race mistake, and then just doesn't acknowledge it and doesn't just humble herself and acknowledge it and say she's freaking sorry. And the last time she did this is when she used the N-word in the song written by Ja Rule. It was everybody's fault but hers.
No. I'm going to disagree there because I posted a YouTube video of Ja Rule talking about him. That was his song, and he was okay with it. He was fine. He wrote the song.
I know that. No, I'm aware of that. I know that he wrote the song, but she had when she got the response, and mind you, I'm someone who defended her, not because I thought that, well, because she's Puerto Rican, she has a right to say the N-word. Right. It's just that I wanted people to understand why she would feel that it's okay for her to say, given her particular socio-economic upbringing.
Ja Rule and her are collaborating on this, and he even said, he goes, when somebody posed the question, why did you allow her to say this word, he said, I look at my Puerto Ricans as sisters and brothers. We're in the same community. He actually defended that. I don't understand why anybody after her.
No, I know he defended that, and I know he defended that, but I still think that's a separate him co-signing it is a separate issue from Jennifer Lopez acknowledging her fans and saying, this is why I use the term.
You're giving these people too much credit because we said the same thing about Zoe Saldana. Zoe Saldana took a role because she's an actress. She's not going to sit there. At what point are we?
But let me just say this, because this is the thing that really bothered me when the Ja Rule thing came out, because Jennifer Lopez made herself out to be the victim and never just acknowledge that people are hurt and be in the conversation. She turned herself into the victim. It's very hurtful for me to people to say that I'm racist. But acknowledge why people have feelings about it and engage in the conversation. And I feel here we are, almost 20 years later, and she did even worse. She didn't even acknowledge the hurt. And this is much more serious. She should have said something, and she should have apologized. That's my position.
And not only that, guys, but here's the thing, and here's the context. To put All Lives Matter as you do the Orlando tribute, it shows that, yeah, you are absolutely capable of capitalizing on a national event, right, when it's a softball. So, and then in direct juxtaposition to that, you put All Lives Matter, which shows that you're very, very careful in what you talk about, right? She has no problem with Orlando tribute and talking about that, and that's a real softball thing for her. But she's never once said Black Lives Matter. She's never once acknowledged that fan base. So it really does. I mean, it's the wrong timing, and it's just a complete slap in the face. I mean, and you're right, Sophia. She has to acknowledge her fans, and she has to either. You can't, on the one hand, say I'm not racist, you know, and I love my fans, and I'm part of this community, and then on the other hand, not speak up when your community's getting, you know, decimated.
Well, as a person who always tries to give people the benefit of the doubt, because I hate to demonize people, and I just think that she's on a serious learning curve, and I know that she should know better, but she does not, and I don't think it's purposely done.
I guess.
I think she was ignorant. I totally don't believe that she understood. I genuinely believe that she didn't understand that All Lives Matter is used as a, you know, as a racist dismissal of Black Lives Matter. That's how it's largely been used. And she wouldn't be the first person to do that. She's not an everyday person. She's this highly visible, but she still has to be held accountable for not knowing. And she should engage the community. And I want us to be careful, because I don't think critiquing her and calling her out on it is necessarily a demonization of her. I do feel that going so far to come full circle, going so far as to saying that she's a cultural appropriator and that she wears blackness as a costume is completely unfair to her.
You're also offending me. So when you write that, you're pretty much saying, "Oh, Puerto Rican."
Yeah.
That's why a lot of us felt some type of way. Especially if you're from New York. I have to feel like we have to parse that out. It's not just Puerto Rican; it's New Rican. Because if she was an island-born Rican, it's a different dynamic. It's about hip-hop's roots. Hip-hop's roots are in a very particular social, economic, and political time and space in, you know, late 70s, early 80s, you know, drop dead, the Bronx is burning, South Bronx. And Puerto Rican, and another thing I want to add is that part of the reason why Puerto Ricans get erased from that history as if we weren't there is because we were not dominant in the hip hop art forms that actually stuck. So, you know, African Americans dominated the music, and the music, because it's music, has endured all these decades, has gone global. Where even though Puerto Ricans were always there, we were mostly in the graffiti and we were mostly in the dance. And while those things are still being kept alive internationally, they are not the art forms that are easily commodified and packaged and marketed and sold to people. So there's a conflation with hip-hop with just music, when hip-hop is something much broader, and an conflation with the commodification of the music as something that is very easy to package and sell to people. And that is the form that African Americans have dominated. So other people, because there were a lot of white people in graffiti, they get erased from that history, even though there were, you know, white working class people in the creation of, you know, in graffiti. I'm not gonna say in the creation of hip hop because they didn't dominate that, but they participated and they made contributions.
Well, let me ask this, because I was thinking the same thing that Siri just typed.
Okay.
Has Fat Joe said Black Lives Matter?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Has Pitbull?
We need to check. Oh, has Pitbull?
That's a good point.
You know, But I know that there are Latino underground artists who are doing it. Like, I would bet that someone like Immortal Technique has used Black Lives Matter. Immortal Technique created a song with Mos Def when 9/11 happened, where it was a very unflinching critique of the United States, role in our getting attacked. It's like, you go into other countries and you interfere in their affairs, you destabilize other nations. Did you not think that eventually this was going to come back, that the chickens weren't going to come home to roost? So right. Immortal Technique is an example of a Latino hip-hop artist who is very, very political. And while I bet you if I looked him up, he probably has said Black Lives Matter. But again, these are not the visible people. The people who have a mainstream platform like Pitbull, like Fat Joe, these are not the people we're hearing from.
There's a responsibility, though, when you have that kind of platform, and I think that's what makes it really egregious. I'd like to kind of just circle back to the conversation about cultural appropriation. And I know I'm in the minority, and I'm just gonna say it, and it might be controversial, but I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little sick and tired of this cultural appropriation thing, because where does it end? Because what's the opposite of appropriation? Cultural exclusivity? Mm-hmm. At what point then do I have to ask for a hall pass to go into your music scene? And honestly,
I totally get that. Totally get that. I thought that.
And then what happens when the white people are like, okay, all right, no problem, we'll leave hip hop alone, but you can't do Shakespeare because that's cultural appropriation.
At what point? Yes, no, she's got a valid point, because at what point is it balanced?
Exactly, and it's also
here's what we have to take.
Something here too about, and I don't agree at all, because I respect Black Lives Matter, but that's what All Lives and Black Lives Matter is doing right now. Right now, that's the thing. It's similar. It's similar in that people don't seem to understand what Black Lives Matter means. They're taking it the wrong way. It's almost to me, it's the same argument as the cultural appropriation argument.
I don't think people who take Black Lives Matter right want to take it right. I'm sorry. That's where
not at all. I don't think they understand.
I think there's a willful ignorance that what Black Lives Matter is saying, Black Lives Matter too, because nobody questions whether white lives matter. And I also part ways on the cultural appropriation argument. I understand what you're saying, but I know this is an ongoing conversation, and we've talked about this in past episodes, is that we cannot discuss this as if the playing fields are level. We can't discuss this as if the playing fields are level and say, well, what happens when white people can say Shakespeare? The point is, the reason why we got to be careful about that is because they have access to everything.
Right.
And they have an opportunity to express themselves and make money off that expression to everything. They are not really excluded from shit. Whereas we are,
right.
and African Americans and people themselves have struggled to be acknowledged, recognized, compensated consistently, and in proportion to the contributions that they make. So that's why I part ways on the argument, because the playing field is not level.
No,
and we can't talk about it as if
I understand the thing about the playing fields not being level. But the point of the matter is that everybody's kind of forgetting about the intersection of art. Art is fluid, and art is supposed to move from one person to another. It's not supposed to be exclusive of its audience. So, we borrow from one another. So when you start putting art forms into cultural boxes that are not fluid, that are exclusive, I have a problem with that. I'm like,
well, the issue is the marketplace. Because if you're just a group of people sitting around a campfire sharing stories and sharing your dances and sharing your music, then it's cultural exchange. Then it can be appreciation. But when people start to do things like wear turn people into mascots like the sports team.
Oh yeah, that's different. I get
that. And make money off. Once it becomes something that is capitalized for profit, that's where the danger comes in. So that's the intersection that makes this an issue.
Yeah, but that's also really hard to do because, some certain artists for a whole, and you're right. I'm in no way negating the fact that there's unlevel levels of access and unlevel levels of profitability depending on what community you come from. I get that. But my point is, okay, so are we going to tell somebody we can have a cultural exchange and you happen to sing beautifully and you rap wonderfully, but the moment you get on a stage and try to make money off of it, I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to come for you? Like, when do we say the cultural exchange becomes cultural appropriation? When they make money?
I think it becomes cultural appropriation when you don't acknowledge your forebears and you don't use your privilege, the access that you have to open the doors for people from whom those cultural expressions originate.
But I don't remember this happening in the 90s. I don't remember any of this happening in the 90s. I think we had, on our radio stations, we had a really good mix of music. Yeah. What happened that we're not hearing R&B music by black artists anymore? So I don't think it's, I think times change, and when those times change, we have to sort of, step back. And you're both right about it. I feel both of you. I totally understand what Maria's saying. But maybe it's the kind of thing that when you see that there's these trends happening, that we're going 3 steps backwards instead of 10 steps forward, we need to check it, and now we have to reevaluate everything.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I absolutely agree with Sophia about, that it becomes appropriation. I actually really like what you said, Sophia, about when you're not acknowledging your forebears and when you're not being inclusive of the community and bringing the people that originated that art form into the conversation. If you kind of walk away with it going, oh, mine, bye, I think you're right. I think that's
happened in black music throughout history. Yeah. I mean, we can name them. So, yeah, no, I don't think that it's wrong, but I also think, what will we ever be balanced? And it all goes back to race. This is all about race.
It always is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's race and commerce. It's race the intersection between race and commerce. And because right. That's the challenge of a lot of the things that we talk about. When the profit motive enters into human endeavors, especially around human expression and creative expression, this is where it gets tricky. And then ultimately, but what we have to also remember too is who ultimately benefits, right? Because what ultimately benefits is these corporations, right? These larger entities, and they benefit by trafficking in very narrow forms of expression. Because Linda, like you brought up, how we seem to have a lot more diversity of music and talent in the 90s, and now we've moved away from that. It's the same 5 people on the airwaves all the time. I'm really pissed off. I knew that the time was going to come when there was going to be a mainstream white female rapper, and it fucking pisses me off that it's someone like Iggy Azalea, right? Because it's not someone, because she raps in blackface. And she tries to pretend that she's a Southern African-American woman when she is authentically Australian. And the whole point of rap music, what makes rap music endearing to so many people, what makes rap music so popular is the authenticity. It's speaking from your own experience and sharing your authentic experience and being transparent about that experience. Here you have this white girl from Australia pretending that she's the Southern black woman.
No, but she's not
Eminem, who's speaking authentically from his experience.
Here we go again.
What? Right.
What happened with J-Lo is what happened with Iggy Azalea.
What?
Somebody's always going to try to use these women, in a sense, to broaden their audience, to make some money. So who's at fault? Iggy and J-Lo, or the guys who pimp them out? It gets complicated.
And this is why this is a pain. This is a real. I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda, because this is where the political becomes personal too, right? Or how they're connected, because this is why it's such a pain point for African American women, right? Because it's like it's African American men who get headways. Where would T.I. be without his African American female fan base? Where would Diddy be without his African female fan? And then when they choose to put people on, right, they seem to forget about
of all the
their
people.
own sisters.
Yeah.
Huh? Right. So I think this is why politics matter, because it does have personal dimensions to it. This is why this is such a pain point for African American women, and this is why these dialogues are important. This is why I want, when when something like this happens and J-Lo makes a comment like this, why I want Puerto Rican women to pause before they respond, so that we can be compassionate, even though honest, even though it's difficult, compassionate in our response, because that's the pain, that's the undercurrent of those, and if we're going to be in solidarity with each other and build together and recognize that our fates are tied, we have to acknowledge that and not be knee-jerk and play oppression Olympics. So I think that's an important point that you mentioned, because African American women have a reason to be hurt and angry about that. And
I want to say something about something I also, Maria, unless you want to jump in.
No. Sophia was dead on, actually.
Can we get Siri into the conversation? I don't know if she's still having audio problems.
In the chat section. She's not able to make her
She's holding it down
work.
in the chat. Okay.
So what I wanted to say is that I noticed a trend after Jesse Williams gave that wonderful speech at the BET. It was a BET Awards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned about the Black Queens, and that we see you, we see the work you do, and then suddenly everybody, I felt suddenly you started hearing more men say the same thing. But yet, I was talking to my husband and I said, I find it ironic that, who was it? I forgot this guy's name, rapper. But anyway, back in the 80s, you saw nothing but rappers, black men with white women in the background. You never saw black women in the background of these videos. And it made me think about what we do to get put on. Because this past week, when these two unfortunate murders happened, I thought, well, Jesus Christ, what would be our response now? Well, how can we fight this? And I thought we have to keep our money. We have to be careful about how we spend our money. Right now, I know I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to bring it together in that when I see the evolution of things and in time how things change, we do sell out many times to get put on. And I really do think that we need to think about why we want to sacrifice who we are in order to make that dollar. It's the same thing coming up over and over again, like Orange is the New Black. There was a great piece about how the show failed the Dominicans in general, and how, why aren't we up in arms when we hear about a show that features all these people of color, and then we're not seeing a writing staff that represents that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you make a good.
Are we going to say? And we keep letting it happen and letting it happen. It's almost like we're very polite and just very patient. I don't know. I don't get it, but I think we should be angry.
You talked about in terms of making money, but it's also in terms of how we spend our money, and
yes.
Because, and I'm of the mind that it's just internalized oppression is a motherfucker. A colonized people is always waiting to be acknowledged by the oppressor, and waiting for the oppressor to be kind and benign and to acknowledge us. And we keep thinking that if we don't resist and that if we go along with it, eventually they're going to see our humanity and do right by us.
They're never going to respect the humanity. They don't care about our story.
And you know what else? No, it's not going to happen. No, because
So what I was going to say is, I think the best thing that the oppressor does, can I be honest with you, and we've seen this time and again with all the different shows, for example, everybody falls for the line. They let one of us in, right? They're like, don't worry about it. Once you get the stage, you can make a difference. And every one of those poor people is like, when I get there, we'll make a difference. And here's the basic, I'm just going to curse, fucking lie. One of us, alone on a stage, can't bring a revolution.
No.
To make a difference, I bring my community with me, which means, yeah, you can open that door, but it's not just going to be me. I'm bringing 5 of my brothers and sisters with me, and then we can talk. Until then, they keep opening the door just a friggin' crack, and every single time we're like, when I get in there, no.
And who do they choose, right? If they're only going to let one person in, they're not going to let someone in who's going to shake shit up. Right. They want to let someone in who's complacent and complicit. Right. The people who do get in, and I don't want to say that everybody who has gotten in is one of those people. No, I don't want to say that.
You know what?
But there might be somewhat, we got to be kind of like stealth. We got to be the one who looks a certain way and who looks safe and sounds safe, and then once you get in there, shake it up. I don't know how many of us are willing. I don't know how many of us are willing to play.
Listen.
I don't know how many of us are willing to play that game. Once you're in and once you're acknowledged, you might go in there saying, I'm gonna be sneaky and stealth and let them think I'm their friend. But then once I'm in, I'm gonna level up power. I'm gonna hire this person. I'm gonna put this person on. But then once you get in, you're trying to defend your position.
Right, and it's almost impossible to be in a group of people who are watching you. They pick you to be the person, to be the consultant of that voice. And what pressure that is every day, because you do take your job seriously and you have bills to pay. And then at what point are you going to say, I'm going to take a stand and I'm going to get fired?
Right.
Which some people do. Some people do. And again, this is why what we're talking about here is that the problem is systemic, which is why it's as Maria was saying, that it's naive to think that one person is going to come in and make a difference to some extent. I mean, we could have this is a whole other conversation, because can we look at Shonda Rhimes as a model? Like, because she's making some difference, but to what extent?
But you know what?
I enjoy Shonda Rhimes stuff. I am not of the mind that Shonda Rhimes is that revolutionary. I have mixed feelings about some of her work. But she wouldn't be where she is if she hadn't, for example, she's the screenwriter of Crossroads. Crossroads starred Britney Spears, had Zoe Saldana as a sidekick. And Princess Diaries, right? Those are white vehicles. Those were not for us, and that is how she helped her get her way in. And but is she the exception that proves the rule?
But she's also.
And now that she has stood with Jesse Williams, let's see, will she be able? She's a juggernaut, right? Let's see what happens now that she has gotten pressure to fire him, and she's laughed at people who think that she's going to fire him. Let's see what happens.
But she also, by the way, actually did use that stage. Maybe she got in through the Princess Diaries, but she came out with Scandal. So she actually used that stage. And again, I'm going to circle right back to that Charlie the Dead Horse. She did bring her community with her, because her community travels with her in the form of a media ecosphere, which we don't have. But stage and we're going down. Where are the publications that are going to speak on our behalf? Where is the Latino Twitter that's going to rally the voices of our community and provide some real counter leverage to that pressure?
And I agree. And I think when we look at these issues, did you happen to see Real Talk last night? Viggo Mortensen was on.
Oh yeah.
Okay, he said something that I think we all need to. This is the way we need to attack or approach these subjects, is that nothing is ever going to be perfect. Nothing is ever going to, no, politics are not going to be perfect. If Shonda Rhimes is not perfect, well, let's look at the things that she actually did, because somebody will come along and fix those things as well. It's part of, just like Obama can't fix it all. and in time we need to,
Okay.
to trust that it will get done. But Shonda Rhimes has done an amazing job of representing her people.
Yep.
And there's no
So
way I'm not going to say that she doesn't. And the work is being seen by a wide audience. It's not. A lot of people will talk about how it's very soap opera-ish or whatever, but we still have to give her her props for what she's done, what she's accomplished, what she's coming out with a new series, isn't she? She's coming out with a few new series.
she probably is. Probably is.
But not
I
only
just
that,
I
somebody
just want to.
when the whole thing with Jesse Williams came up, somebody wrote, you've got Shonda Rhimes is the EP, the executive producer, and the head of ABC is also a black woman. And he said, that's called positional power. That's what making a difference means. It means that when that pressure comes on, you've got two people that can kind of like you. It's not just that lone soldier. You've got a general that's of your community, and you've got the friggin' president that's of your community. That makes a difference.
Yeah. I want to be cautiously optimistic, and let's do a time check. The one thing I wanted to say, and this is a whole other conversation, but I want to drop it for thought, and maybe we can talk about it in the future, because I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter about, I feel that even though Shonda Rhimes has made, made some blazed the trail, I still feel like we are actually behind from where we were in the 90s, because I didn't understand why we could have shows like Living Single and Girlfriends and and we actually have less now. I feel like where are those shows? Those shows were successful. Those shows were people watch those shows. Why don't we have even more shows like that on the air at one time? And this is the thing with the Tyler Perry thing. I think what happens is you get the industry gets one juggernaut and puts all their eggs in that basket. So there shouldn't, with what Shonda Rhimes has been able to accomplish, there should be more Shonda Rhimes. There should be more people like her given opportunities. And I think what tends to happen is the same thing with Tyler Perry. What tends to happen is they're like, well, we'll give Tyler Perry all the opportunities since he's proven to be commercially viable and financially successful. That's a whole other conversation, and I want to do it. But
I think that we should study
successful. It doesn't. Again, it's like it doesn't trickle down. It's like because the power structure still remains in white hands.
Like I said before, I think the issues change over time. I think a good study is to study the 90s. And why things were so different in music and on television, and try to figure out what happened after the 90s, that it didn't remain that way.
It's a good source of study. Yeah,
it's a great study because it did exist, and it also existed. I mean, I have an issue with Norman Lear getting patted on the back so much about all these shows that he put people of color in, and they were great shows, and but I have an issue with someone who's not a person of color creating a show about people of color. I just have a problem with that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that regardless, or have a whole team of people behind you making sure that because when I watch Good Times now, I cringe.
Oh, really?
I'm watching
that's a whole other conversation, because Good Times as a working class Afro-Latina from the Bronx, Good Times was an affirming show for me, because and I'm sure if I watched it now there would be some things that I have, but you have to put it in its context. It's good that it makes you cringe now, because that's some sign that we are making strides.
Right.
Can we do a time check, because
I wanted to acknowledge.
Okay, so let's at least, we may not go deep into it. Let's at least acknowledge that Latina Magazine had a panel of diverse Latinas. What they had in common were that they were all members of sororities, and this was specifically to discuss, the Latinas' role in the Black Lives Matter movement. So we want to encourage folks to find that on their page, find that video on their page, and to watch that, because I thought it was interesting. Like, I'm glad that they did it live. I really do. I didn't like the way it was shot. I'm like, you know, I want people to take what they did, such a serious and important thing, and I want people to take it seriously, and that's the kind of thing where production value matters.
Well,
so I wish that
Essence Magazine does that all the time. Ebony, who was it? Somebody else does it all the time in that same way.
I think, but Essence, Ebony, especially Ebony, has a track record of doing that. Latina Magazine doesn't. So, that was my only thing. I'm glad that they did it, and especially on this topic, you know, I give them kudos to that. It's just that I want to see that on the main page and not in a Facebook group. So hopefully that will be edited and put onto their main page, so that it can be seen much more widely. Yeah, that's how for me, it's about distribution and production value, so that people take it seriously and that people find it.
And do we know, for example, because I know that Latina Magazine also has a very strong, I believe, West Coast presence. Does anybody know what the West Coast Latinos are saying or not saying about Black Lives Matter?
I know a few people are just.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Black Lives Matters?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I
know that panel at Latina Magazine was pretty diverse, and I don't know if the folks there, where they're originally from, meaning, you know, geographically in the U.S. But of course, just being an activist, I presume, because that's how it's always been, that there are Latino voices all across the country who are engaged in Black Lives Matter. And the comments were pretty. What I did appreciate about it being in the Latina Magazine, putting this live on Facebook, was that it gave people to comment and engage in conversation. And one of the really interesting questions was language around calling the solidarity, because calling a solidarity kind of suggests that we're helping folks out as if these are not our issues, that these are our issues too, that we are affected by this too, and then somehow calling it solidarity kind of says like, well, this doesn't affect us, but we got your back. When the truth is, it very much does also affect us as well. But the flip side to that can be we're acknowledging that that this affects us, but not separating our movement. These are parallel, connected movements. It's like how I felt when Oscar's So White, when Eva Longoria wanted to go with a brown ribbon. I'm like, you don't need to do that, because Oscar's So White did not exclude Latinos. I don't feel like Black Lives Matter excludes Latinos. It might. I don't think we need to say yes, Latino lives matter, but I don't think we need a separate hashtag. I think. Even if not all of us are African diaspora, you know, what happens to them, you know, a world that's not safe for Black people is not a world that's not safe for Latinos, regardless of your race.
Okay. You're right. So, there's a comment here I wanted to read real quick, because we're at noon.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 2 minutes after. But isn't print media on the down, and so FB is a wider audience, or am I misunderstanding Sophia? One of the things I will say is that I kind of disagree a little bit on the whole production value thing, and this is why. I don't want them editing anything out. I don't want it to. I want to hear exactly how everyone feels. I want those comments to be real time and not edited for whatever, because that can happen too. I think that a lot of people are using FB Live for the same reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bigger audience. So I don't have a problem with that at all. I think there were too many people on the panel, to be honest with you. There's a large group of women, so I think it was too many people. If they can just use
especially for just an hour.
Of course.
Yeah, I think
it was a sorority, so there was a lot of women that had a lot. I love the diversity of that panel too. But yeah, if they could just pick maybe no more than 6 people, I think it would.
And let me clarify what I meant by production value. I mean, and FB Live, like, I totally glad that it was on Facebook Live. I just want it also to live on their site, because there's a lot of people that are not going to follow it or find it on Facebook.
Right.
And by production value, I don't necessarily, because Linda, you know this as an indie producer, put a lot of time, money, and you've invested a lot in your own productions. That could we just have more than one camera going, right? So that's what I mean. That's what I mean, because my fear is that people look at it, see this kind of small box on this one woman, can see in the frame that she's sitting between two other women, and there are just, unfortunately, there are people, because they're not used to hearing these things from Latinos, these serious, substantive conversations from us, who see that and don't even press play. So that's my only, I'm not asking them to put in a lot more money than they need to. I'm not asking them to get, expensive cameras, but even if it was shot on a phone, it could have been shot on 5 phones, and they don't have to edit out anything, but they could have put stuff together. I want them to do that. I'm asking them, I think it would be a good idea for them to leave Facebook Live because it's authentic and try to leave that, but to also take the step further, do that, and put it on latina.com.
You know what I would like even more? I would like regular town hall meetings where we're all invited to give our opinions, feelings, because it shouldn't be limited to just certain people. It should be open to many, because we are a community. That's the wonderful thing about social media. So if they can somehow figure out, they do all different types of events. I would love town hall meetings.
Yeah. And that's a good note to end on. That's a great note to end on, because I'm telling you, and if anybody on Facebook anybody who works at Facebook watching this, when Facebook makes it possible for the 4 of us to be able to talk live, and we can do, that's where we're going to be on the Latinas Chat Media page. So you guys can have a live conversation with us. The technology's not there. So somebody get on it, because Blab missed the boat. Google Hangouts is, as you could see, too glitchy. Facebook, you got something happening here. Make it so that 4 of us can talk at once.
Right.
And you will be the market leader in these social media conversations and the platforms for these conversations. So should we wrap up?
Yes. Thank you, Siri, for moderating the chat area.
Yes, because that's important. Thank you, Siri. Sorry we couldn't hear you. We're going to figure it out. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you for everybody, if you're watching this on the replay, for catching up with us. And please know that the conversation continues. We're all on Twitter. Our umbrella handles is at Latinas in Media, but we use the Latinas Chat Media hashtag so we can find you even as individuals. And of course, bring the conversation back to the Latinas Chat Media Facebook page, because these conversations are ongoing. We start one topic and we get to another, because all these things are connected. So if there's anything else that wasn't a main topic but that we started to talk about that you want to add more to, please do. And like the Latinas Chat Media page, so that when we have our next chat, because we're trying to do them more frequently, we're trying to have a primetime version, so that for those of you who rather hang out with us, after dinner, we're trying to do that. So definitely give us your feedback and participate and stay in touch with us. So everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for devoting some of your time of your weekend with us.
All right,
bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.